Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good afternoon. I call the City Council informational meeting of September 10th, 2019 to order. Welcome to those in the audience and those watching online or at home. Councilor Chair Selberg is a little under the weather today, so I'm filling in today. The first item on our agenda is committee and commission reports. The first one will be CVB bid board report. Councilor Brecky, do you have a report for us?
Sorry. I said I actually do not. I actually missed that meeting. That was the meeting that the CDB did pass the budget. And so
Okay.
It's here today, and that's really the main thing that was accomplished at that meeting. And so she'll be here to discuss that and answer any questions.
Okay, we'll let them cover it if there's anything. Next up is B, Southeastern Council of Government, CCOG. Councilor Member Starr or Staley, would you have a report possibly?
I've just got just a few details. We actually were presented with their budget, so we talked about that. Jeff Eckhoff was going to come in and talk about the planning department, but he couldn't make it, so Shelley Unruh from the housing department came in and gave her PowerPoint, which was very good, and actually I think it would be good for us to have another refresher on what she was talking about as far as their goals for getting people into affordable housing. We did touch on that. She was talking about how they're going to get away from the programs of the past, where what we used to do in our city is we would buy a home that was in disrepair. And then, let's say we bought the home for $50,000. We would then destroy the home and build a new home for $200,000, and then we would sell it for like $150,000. So it really was kind of a losing deal for the city. And the past budget cycles, when they've come in, I've always suggested that we maybe need to partner up with the Habitat for Humanity people, where they're building things from the bottom up. And guess what? Shelley said they're going to be putting more energy into that and getting away from the rebuilding, the city building homes themselves. We got a report also because this CCOG group is working to fund the governor's homes, and she said that they sold 3 governor's homes, which is similar to what I just explained, where you have something starting from scratch with where you can even maybe make a little money in the deal. And she also said that the CCOG organization has hired, they had an opening for several years, and they have ended up hiring somebody by letting them work via electronic communication. So they were kind of excited about that, so that they would be saving some money in that activity. So I think that's pretty much what we talked about.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Staley. Next item is 2C, Siouxland Heritage Museum Board, and it looks like Councilmember Starr should have a report for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was one of those board meetings that it's kind of fun to catch up. The budget's been approved for 2020. We were able to move forward on the financials. Everything's kind of running like it should be. The number of young people as well as adults that are able to participate in the programs of the Siouxland Heritage Museum is awesome across the county and across the city and the county, and to be able to pass that history on to our younger folks. The real exciting news of the museum board was that $160,000 has been added to their endowment fund. They received a $150,000 anonymous donation, and then the past chair of the group also added $10,000 from his family. So there was $160,000 total that goes into the endowment fund to continue on the works of the museum. The other thing that's kind of interesting is getting a handle on a new building with the Irene Hall Resource Center. There are 3 high-tech heating and cooling systems from different vendors that all have to kind of work together to have the climate-controlled environment that they need for a museum storage. So trying to get all three with the humidity, the heating, and the cooling, and bringing to use the high-tech programs that they have in all three, bringing them all together has involved a little more work than they anticipated to make them all talk to each other, I guess is the best way to explain it. The other is that the utility expenses are starting to come in a little higher than they expected budget-wise too. And I think some of that will at least level out once they have an idea of getting the systems all working together. Plus, with the move, they moved a lot of artifacts during the middle of the winter, and so the facility was up and open more than it probably would normally be in a year by the time the things that are moving. The other is with the old courthouse museum, they're able to repurpose a lot of the space that they've, by moving the artifacts to the resource center, they've gained an additional gallery to do an additional display. So there are more things to continue to see at the museum. So, and there's some work being done at the Pettigrew that from the hailstorm 2 years ago that are finally getting updated and fixed. So, thank you.
Okay, very good. Great news on the donations. Next item, item 3, City Council open discussion. Anyone have open discussion for today? Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. I'll just make a quick reference. Councilor Starr and myself attended the program that was the Development Foundation hosted it, Mike Gray at Midco. This is a program that they intend to continue to do to highlight different businesses and the impact that they have in the community. So we were able to take a tour, walk around and see really the customer service area as well as all the marketing and technology area. And then we went down the road just a little bit further for just really talking about how much technology impacts the world and how fast they have to keep up with everything. And had lunch. And so this is something that I think they plan to do every couple of months maybe, but it was very eye-opening and worth it. And so just encourage y'all to go next time you get the opportunity when they do these in the community. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Sale.
Thank you. I'd just like to give a quick shout out to the Sioux Falls Police Department. 2 weeks ago, we had a break-in in my home in broad daylight, and that happened on a Monday evening. And by Thursday, the culprits had been apprehended. And a lot more detail came from the police department on what happened. But I tell you, that's fast action in my book, that they had already apprehended people. So to Matt Burns, the police chief, Detective Redmond, Officer Baker, and those people involved, thank you very much. We'll just get that on the public record.
Great. Councilor Kiley.
And thank you. It was my pleasure to, after 4 years of work, we broke ground for the first ever state veterans cemetery yesterday morning. We did it in pouring rain. But if anybody had told me 4 years ago when we started this that in order to accomplish this, you're going to have to break ground in pouring rain, I'd say, let it pour. It was a very well worth, it was well worth the effort, and it did not, while Councilor Rolfing and myself did a lot of the work, and Jim David certainly played a major role in that too. And I might add that I was very pleased that Mr. Jim David was also on a shovel for the groundbreaking yesterday. Very well deserved. I thank you for your efforts. And I thank each and every one of you, because this is a council effort. It would not have gone forward without your support. So I thank each and every one of you. And let's face it, if we hadn't made that gift of 60 plus acres, we'd most likely still be looking for land and where the Veterans Council had been 10 years ago. So thank you, colleagues on the Sioux Falls City Council.
Absolutely. Something that was a team effort of the entire council and multiple units of government. So incredible to see. Others? Seeing none, we're going to move on to presentations. The first is going to be approving the 2019-2020 CVB bid budget, presented by Terry Schmidt, Executive Director of the Sioux Falls Convention and Visitors Bureau. Welcome, Terry.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us. I would like to also introduce, I certainly don't do this by myself, so this pack right back here, that's the staff of the Sioux Falls Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I know they're really anxious to all come up here one by one and talk, so we'll look forward to that. And then one of our board members, Cindy Walsh, is sitting over here ever so quietly. So I appreciate all of them being here as well. Well, it's been an exciting year, and we're looking forward to even more excitement in the coming year. You all have a packet in front of you, I hope. And in that packet, you will find our budget summary for the coming year. You'll find, as you know, the bid board is part of our budget, the bid budget, and then we have the CVB budget. The bid budget is from 2011, when the hoteliers got together and decided to tax themselves and put a business improvement district upon themselves of $2 per room per night in order to fund the CVB. And then, of course, the room tax that is still given to the CVB to help fund our efforts. Behind that, on the left side of your packet, you will find our 2018 annual report. Behind that, you will find our summary of our strategic plan, which I'm anxious to talk a little bit about with you today. And behind that, you will find the marketing report for this month. And behind that, you will find the Visitor Information Center report, just to give you a little glimpse of what's going on at the Visitor Center. On the right side of your packet, you'll find the Falls Park brochure, which we are responsible for printing each year. And then you will see the venue guide that the CVB produces. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. The visitor guide that I hope you're all familiar with, and then the visitor map behind that. Excuse me. So with that, I think you all know that we are here today, as requested, to talk about the bid budget. Just a little reminder that according to our bylaws, the bid is, the function of the bid is to provide funds to the Sioux Falls Convention and Visitors Bureau for marketing and promotion of the visitor industry in the city of Sioux Falls and increase the room night sales of lodging facilities within the business improvement district. And again, that was formed in December of 2011. Again, that was led by the hotels, but certainly could not have been completed without the approval of the City Council. All of our funding comes from that. That money, as you know, is paid by visitors. A lot of people think that it's paid by the hotels. Actually, the hotels collect it from the visitors, and then it is run through the proper channels and then given to the CVB. Ultimately, of course, everything that we do is to enhance the economic benefit and strength of the community of Sioux Falls. Today, we have 5,209 hotel rooms in Sioux Falls. Right now, today, 59 hotels. We have 298 more rooms that will be opening soon. That's with 3 hotels. The Glow out at Dolly Farms will have 79 rooms, and that's going to open in December. The Hyatt out at Lake Lorraine will have 112 rooms, and that's supposed to open in the summer, next summer, 2020. And then out at Lake Lorraine again is the Aloft at 107 rooms, and that's to open in 2021. Those are as of right now, today. So another 298 rooms coming on the block in the coming year. Some people ask us if that's too many rooms. No, it is not too many rooms. You all know that when we're bidding soccer tournaments, softball tournaments, et cetera, we need all of those rooms. Are we building those rooms for Easter Sunday? Some might ask us, no, we are not building those rooms for Easter Sunday. Between shopping, medical, conventions, meetings, events, more and more we need those rooms. Some of our limited service hotels have become more of a long-term stay hotel. so people are not necessarily going to those properties for a weekend stay or an event stay, a one-night stay or a convention stay. So things are shifting a little bit in that area. In 2017, we had the CVB could count. Please remember, this is that the CVB could count 1.2 million visitors with an economic impact of $403,482,000. In 2018, we went up to 1.9 million visitors that we could count. I always have to say that we could count, bumping the economic impact up to 486 million. In 2019, right now, we don't know for sure because the year hasn't ended. It's been one of those years of up, down. We've had agricultural problems that we all know about. There have been weather problems around the United States and internationally. They have affected travel. People who have lost their homes in the South, are they still going to take that 10-day vacation, or are they going to rebuild a home? Those are things we just don't know yet. Just before we came here, we received a bid check and a room tax check, and both Kathy and I were like, oh, we haven't seen one that high in a long time. So we have our fingers crossed that maybe July is going to pull in some good dollars, that maybe we will see that bump. Also, please remember that we don't really know our numbers until about a 3-month lag. So even though the year is going to end, the end of December, we're really not going to know till probably March what our real end numbers for the year will be. So it does get a little bit tricky. I would like to share quickly with you that in 2019 so far, we have booked 104 conventions, and they are adding up to over $11 million in economic impact, and they are for the future, not for today. We have sent out 106 leads, and those leads would have totaled $55 million. We have lost 32 pieces of business, totaling $38 million. Why have we lost those? We have lost them because we haven't had enough meeting space. We have not had enough meeting space with attached hotel rooms, and they don't want to go to multiple hotels. We have lost those pieces of business because there's nothing to walk to around the convention center. There's that walkability factor. And then a few of the pieces of business, very few, but we have lost because of airfares. Our competition can offer a lower airfare, but those are very few pieces of business. At tentative, we're still working on 60 pieces of business that we have out there that we're trying to convince yet to make their decision to come to Sioux Falls. We have had 7 site visits so far in 2019, 5 of them national conventions, 2 of them Midwest. We did a sales blitz in Washington, D.C., where we had 23 appointments, 2 days there. 23 appointments in 2 days for the sales team. We're out at DC. They booked 1 group since that sales blitz, and 7 are in the works, so we're excited about that. We have 2 bid trips that we've taken. We have won both of those. I can't tell you what they are because they haven't contracted and announced yet, but one of them is 400 plus people for 2022, and another one is for 2022, 1,000 people plus 1,000 participants plus 2.5 people per participant for 7 nights. Neither of these 2 national conventions have ever been in the state before, and we can't wait to announce them, but we can't do it yet. So we don't want to jinx it. And sales travel, we've been to 9 shows all over the country. And the really fun thing is that I want to share, we do travel writers. We talk to a lot of travel writers. We host a lot of travel writers. We've had 16 travel and lifestyle writers who have been here since 2019. 24 additional media and travel writers that we have worked with others on, and 3 media interviews that have gone on then and written articles in magazines. But one I want to tell you about that is really fun, we had a person, actually the editor, from the St. Louis, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, She writes, she's the editor for the St. Louis newspaper. Their circulation was 200,000, and this was a Sunday newspaper, and then over 2 million a day on their website. She came to Sioux Falls. It cost us $200. Look what she, imagine this in newspaper form. This is what she wrote on Sioux Falls. So, $200 and a little bit of staff time, and that's the kind of thing that you get out of a travel writer. So for $200, we'll take it. Pretty good deal, pretty good deal. So anyway, that is some of the excitement we've had this year. I want to tell you, as of our competitive cities, just in July, number 1 ranked for occupancy in hotels, the top one was Rapid City. Number 2 was Milwaukee. Number 3 was Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Number 4 was Rochester. Number 5, Des Moines. Number 6, St. Paul. Number 7, Overland Park, Kansas. Number 8, Madison, Wisconsin. Number 9, Bismarck. Number 10, Fargo. And number 11, Omaha, which shocked me. I thought Omaha would be way higher. But our occupancy in July was number 3 out of 11. So we're pleased about that. Okay, now the budget. You have it in front of you, and it's also on the screen. I know that the city told us or suggested to us to use a bid income number of about $2,100,000 plus. We looked at history. We looked at the patterns that we've been showing, and to be very honest, we were hesitant to use that large of a number. So we brought it down a little bit. And we brought it down, as you can see, to $1,922,700. So that's the income that we're going by. I hope we're wrong, and I hope that the city's right. I really do, but we're being a little conservative, I guess. So you can see that that's the income. Administration, $921,000 expense. And then you go down to program and services, sales development, advertising. Digital strategy is our big one. You know, that's where it all happens. That's where our marketing, all of our digital strategy tactics across all of our markets, from leisure and group tour to conventions, meetings, sports. It includes extensive social media, display, search, email, content, automated and retargeting campaigns. All of our campaigns are within that $568,000. It also includes platforms that monetize the return on our investments, such as hotel and flight bookings, hotel revenue, and overall economic impact and engagement. We use user-generated content to drive the personalization that targets the potential visitors based on their individual interests. So this is a big, big category for us. It's what we really focus on to get the word out, to do our marketing, all of our strategy, all of our digital marketing advertising. It's big, but it is the focus. Then under that, event ads, those are local ads that if somebody wants us to run an ad for an event that's going to be in town. Sports publications, we're budgeting $7,300, and that's for 2 major national sports magazines. Trade publications, the $60,000 is for 6 major big ads in 6 major national publications. Some of the trade publications are also lumped into that digital advertising. And then miscellaneous, we gave ourselves $4,500. I do also want to let you know that, and I forgot to say this at the beginning, when we wrote our budget this year, we wrote everything we thought we needed, and in order to bring it back to meet budget, we had to cut $500,000 of program out in order to meet budget. So we chopped quite a bit out. All right, then total sales development printing was $13,675. That's all of our printing materials, working on a lot of our necessities in order to get the print word out. Sales development bidding. Now, your first one, bid meetings leads CROW. That means we call CROW is when we go out and do community outreach. We meet one-on-one with different people to explain to them what the CVB does, work with them on any leads that they might have, any organizations that they might have. And it ends up to be a cup of coffee or a lunch, whatever. The pre-promo requirements and commitments, when you're working with a convention or an event, you sometimes have to say, look, we'll be there to bid. We'll bid. If we win, we promise we'll come to your 2021 convention to pre-promote for 2022 when you will be in Sioux Falls. So that's a lot of what that is. Underneath that, you will see the American Harp Society. We had to commit $3,500 to them in order to get them to come here. The Commercial Vehicle Safety Association, $3,500. Golden Age Games, $3,000. So those are those upfront commitments that we have to do. Meeting Planner Incentive Program. Well, again, what do we have to incent them with? It's not unusual for us to get a $20,000 requirement anymore. Request, which we choke on because we feel we have a great product. 20,000 bucks out of our budget is huge, but that's what's out there. We put in 15,000 for the whole year, knowing that, you know, we're going to offer other services and such in order to work with them to get them here. Planner gifts. You all know, you travel, there's always some kind of swag at any convention that you go to. Site visits and FAMs. This is what we love. You can send all kinds of materials to people, but get them to come here, and they love Sioux Falls. They can read everything or see everything online, but you get them here, and they fall in love with Sioux Falls. So site visits, let's get them in here. What's it cost us, car rental and gas, to have them here? So we have a line item of $2,000. Bidding investments. Again, what are we paying today? So let me back up. If we're bidding the Pat Starr Convention, National Convention for 2025, and he says you got to have 10 grand at the time. So we don't put that in the budget today. We put it in 2025. So what you're seeing here under the 50 grand are ones that are coming up this coming year that we have committed to in the past. That 50 grand is if something comes up this coming year and they say, we'll book you this year, but we got to have that money now, this year, then we can play with them. We can compete for it and grab it. And that does happen, not often, but it does happen. And you can see the groups that we have had to commit to this year. And yes, Pheasant Fest sticks out. I know it does, $18,500. Last time they were here, my commitment to them was, if you'll come and give us a try, I'll raise $500,000 for you. We did it. It didn't come one penny out of the CVB budget. We went out in the community and raised it. We broke every record they've ever had. I'm not supposed to announce this yet, but they're coming back. And so we're going to Minneapolis in this coming February, and we had to commit $18,500 as a sponsorship in order to do that for when they might come back. Okay, all right, so that's what you see there. Sales development travel, bid trips, $15,000. You never know when we have to travel. South Dakota Governor's Conference on Tourism, $2,000. Sales blitzes back to DC. Costs us $12,000 to go to DC for a week. Trade travel shows, that $66,100 is for 13 shows. Sometimes it's 2 people that go to a show, sometimes it's 4. So that's what that $66,000 is for. Miscellaneous travel, a whole $250. Sometimes we have to run to Pier to do a bid trip or something. Tourism, promotion and advertising. 4 publications, we have budgeted $48,000. One of them, it will bring in $3,000 because it's a AAA ad that costs us $21,000, but you cannot not be in it for the leisure traveler. So that's what bumps that one up so high. Group travel sales is $1,200. Rest stop, again, bring those rest stop fam tour employees in here, along with the travel writers, and we host them for $2,500. Why is that so low? It's so low because we have great partners in Sioux Falls. We can call up hotels, we can call up restaurants, we can call up the attractions and say, hey, they're coming in. Will you partner with us? Will you give them a free room? Will you comp their dinner? That kind of thing, so we're able to keep the costs down. And then South Dakota Tourism Co-ops, $67,000. You know, when you co-op together, you can do a whole lot more. So that's going to be our partnership for the winter and for the winter campaign and some other smaller campaigns throughout the year that we will basically be able to get way more for our money by working with them. So that brings us down to the bottom line of $1,925,000. Okay. May I keep going?
Yes, please.
I'll hurry. In your packet.
You're doing fine.
So I want to touch on the strategic plan, if I may. And that's what this is in your packet. Okay, we are rocking this strategic plan. We are really excited about it. It's been a long go, but it is working. We are engaged with the companies that are doing much of our work. If you look on page 4, you can see the timeline that has taken place. We are now in the process of coming together where we will probably have in the next few months the plan that will take us into a sales plan, that will take us into a marketing plan, that will give us our branding plan. So as you look through this, you can look on 4 at the timeline. You can look at the engagement process. Page 7 is really what it takes, the vision, the mission, and the position. Our vision is crazy and simple as it sounds. We want to share Sioux Falls with the world. We want everybody to know what Sioux Falls has and the great community that we are. Our mission, market Sioux Falls as a one-of-a-kind destination and provide an energized visitor experience to enhance economic impact. And position, we pride ourselves on being the one-stop shop for all visitor industry stakeholders, happily providing convention, event, sales, and planning, advocacy for the visitor industry, marketing to all visitors, and collaborative partnerships. And then if you look on through 8, and 9 takes us into the imperatives. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're here. We want to be here. And by going to here, we want to make Sioux Falls better. We want more of the world to know more about Sioux Falls. We want to be bold. Some people have said, you know, let's be stronger. Let's get out there. Let's be louder about all the things that Sioux Falls has to offer. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to shout it out. Then you look at page 11. There's your first imperative. Pursue strategic organizational foundations. Make sure that we've got it all together as an organization. And you can read through, I'm not going to read all that to you, but you can see that. Number 2, evolve strategic marketing. Let's make it better. Number 3, refine stakeholder engagement and partnerships. Let's get stronger together. Let's do more together. Number 4, expand and amplify sales programs, which is going to be the bottom line to make it all the ROI of what we all need. So, I can give you all the gory details of this plan, but you don't want to hear that right now. And if you want all the gory details, we'll give them to you anytime. And may I answer any questions? And I went overtime.
Thank you very much. As usual, enjoy the enthusiasm, and thanks for cheering Sioux Falls on.
Well, thank you all. We appreciate your support, and it's fun to see you all at events and different things and participating and just being there to support the industry and coming together, and with all of that enthusiasm from you and support, it's what makes it happen. So thank you, all of you.
And thank you. And questions from the council? Councilor Kiley.
Yes, thank you. Terry, you'd mentioned 298 new rooms are on their way.
Yes, sir.
Did that include the Kelly Inn at the old Great Western Bank?
Well, we already, you mean the Phillips, Hotel on Phillips?
Yes. What?
We included that in our 5209 because it's just about there.
Just about there.
Yeah.
Okay. You had mentioned lost events, meeting space with attached hotel rooms, walkability, not close to attractions. airfare is high. Those are some of the reasons why you lost events. Can you expand on the reasons why we attracted the events?
Oh, of course. We attract the events because, number one, we're in the middle of the country. We are affordable. We are, and some people may not agree with this, but we do have a lower crime rate than a lot of other places in the United States. We are out there to a lot of folks who come here from major metropolitan areas. We are very accommodating in Sioux Falls. Not to toot our own horn, but we work with those people from the minute to the end, and they don't get that in a lot of cities. They like our convention center. The smaller ones like our convention center because it's all on one floor. But as soon as it's something that they outgrow, they don't come back. They love, love, love our downtown. That's the biggest thing we have going for us is our downtown. If it's a medical convention, they're all about our medical facilities. If it's an education convention, let me not even be market specific. Let me just say that Sioux Falls people are willing to engage with conventions here, and they don't see that in larger markets. But they love our convention center until they outgrow it. They love the food scene. The food scene is a big thing for Sioux Falls. The problem, we can get them here, but then it's the walkability issue and we can't get them back. And I don't mean to turn such a wonderful positive into a negative, but you know, the Lutheran Women's Missionary League is a perfect example. 3,500 women. Got them here, they were so excited, loved it, loved it, loved it. Oh, well, where's the coffee shop that we can walk to? Well, where's a little gift shop that I can go get my granddaughter a gift? Well, we can't walk anywhere, we're out here. Well, we had buses, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted to be able to walk to a spot. They have told us they won't come back until either we get a whole bunch of stuff around the convention center or we find a place for them downtown. They love Sioux Falls, though. It's a wonderful community. And I don't mean to round around your, but.
Okay, no, that was good. Thank you very much.
Others, Councilor Staley.
Terry, what are they saying about the mall? Well, you're saying love downtown, or are they loving the mall? Is that still?
Some.
I mean, I'm not trying to trash the mall, but
No.
Because I mean that the mall has been like a real destination, exciting place to be.
Some do, but especially the younger, if you get into the younger groups of people, and by younger I mean the millennials, they want downtown boutiques type shopping. The mall, we hear a mall's a mall's a mall. There are some people who, if they come from small communities, they do want to hit the mall, but they love downtown. I mean, the mall's still a nice thing, and we still sell it, but we don't hear as much excitement about it as we might have 10 years ago, or even 5.
Well, and you and Councilor Sale were very present at these recent event center meetings, yes. Right, the campus. So, and I'm thinking you've probably been to other communities that have a big presence like the event center that's somewhat spaced away from other entities. I mean, how do they handle that? Because I wouldn't think that all of them are right in the middle of their downtown.
You're right. I mean, I've been to several convention centers around the country, and they're not necessarily all in the heart of downtown, but where they are built, there is a lot built up around them. And by a lot, I mean restaurants, shops, things to do. at least where I have been.
How many have you seen where there's actually a shuttle kind of energy going back and forth?
Most all.
I suppose that the challenge with what we have now is that you don't have a consistent enough presence there to have a shuttle moving back and forth every half hour, right? To take people downtown, it would be kind of situational.
Well, in most of the places I've been to, Teresa, that shuttle runs to not just to their downtown, but let's just imagine a little bit, convention center, mall, downtown, maybe even Lake Lorraine. I mean, they do a round robin in several areas in a community.
So was that discussed? We haven't gotten the details of the...
Not that I recall. Kurt, I don't recall that many stops being discussed, or even a lot about that transportation piece.
It was part of the discussion. It wasn't a main piece of the discussion, but connectivity was something that was talked about, but it was also decided it was maybe a little bit out of the realm of the direction that the mayor had given for what we should look at. It was kind of like herding cats at times to get everybody back to the main mission of that group. But connectivity between downtown, the airport, the event center campus, and other destinations was certainly addressed. And as a counselor, I'm hoping that the transit team that's working on that can come up with some very inventive ideas for us.
Walkability was a word that we heard, but we didn't get into it in a deep fashion.
Well, and this could be something separate from a transit situation that would be just totally designated to the needs of the convention center, right? I mean, that would be just a bus of some kind that would be helping you. The thing we heard today is that none of the plans for this convention or the demolition of the arena are going to happen until 2021, 22. So in the meantime, we still have to make do. So to me, having some kind of shuttle service would be a very low cost way of trying to just deal with what we have here right now.
It could be.
And just to bring people together. Now, the other thing, and you were at these meetings, but I know this, I remember when we were talking about the event center going there, our hope was that this was going to generate all sorts of activity. And it's still a little bit desolate out there. Mm-hmm. It seems to be like a little bit of a no man's land for some reason. So was it discussed in your task force meetings about the possibility of some type of a TIF or a property tax reduction to encourage people to come out there? And did they ever talk about how they might take that surrounding area? Okay.
I don't mean to take up your time here. Yes, those things were discussed, Teresa. Also, the adjoining properties that might come up for sale in the future, what the city could do in that role. But again, the task force then got back to the main issue that the mayor had said, okay, what do you do with this property today? We did discuss is the city's role to entice businesses to locate there, and what availability resources did we have? Could it be TIFs? Could it be tax abatements? All of this stuff. They were talked about during the discussion, but to boil the 6-month wide-ranging discussion on what was best for the city had to be put back into what was best for that campus at that time. And I know that Dan and Ryan are going to come and present in front of the city council, and they can maybe address some of those questions a little bit more specific. But again, we tried to get to the gist of it is what's best for this campus today. Not what could we do across the street, how we could connect, though we thought some of those issues were maybe addressed by other committees.
But you were talking about adding another hotel. Wasn't that part of it?
The need was, not to take away their thunder, but the need was addressed, yes, that it does need to have another full-service hotel there to attract the kind of businesses in the future. To make that piece of property sing and dance as well as it should, more convention space is needed, another hotel is needed along with that on that property.
Thank you. Well, and I'm only bringing it up because this really ties in directly with what you're talking about, that making that convention center as viable as it can be And is there room on the city property now to have businesses? Or would that be like as it exists now? Besides having a hotel on site on this property, did they ever talk about having some shops in there or building on?
Yes, we did talk about that. We also talked to the master plan for that campus has to be developed. And I understand there is going to be money in the 2020 budget to develop a master plan going forward, what is best for that campus. Does that include shops? How do we attract businesses to go out there? Hopefully that master plan that gets put together in 2020 can address all those concerns, that we as a council can act on them to put those things into 2021. So all of those things were talked about, Teresa, but again, it's like any discussion you and I might have. We might go way off the subject and then we have to bring it back to actually what was said. There is a great opportunity out there today. Certainly the Denny Sanford Premier Center has performed admirably. Terry brought great clarification to the council or the committee about what the need is for what she does and what to bring and where we would have to go in the future to make that property prosper and be, we kept talking about revenue positive for us. It had to generate something. You just can't throw money after it. So her data that she brought forward actually was one of the reasons that I went into that thing saying, we don't need to tear down the arena, but I changed my mind. So, and we can get more detail when that report comes, but she brought great information about how we need more convention space to really get to the next level.
Right, but I'm also hearing her say that we need more shops in that area, and I would think that, let's just say the arena didn't go anywhere. Right now, you're still saying some shops would be nice. Some kind of has a developer ever talked about building a mall out there? And, like Jim Entenman has some property, we could maybe buy that from him and rip that down and build up or something. But having something there I haven't seen anybody really taking, except, well, let me back up. We do have that thing across the street that I think is sitting vacant now, right? The
Utility billing office,
no, I'm talking about the other way.
well, the hotel.
It's Brennan's place. We got that, and there was talk even back, I sat through those task force meetings back in Dave Munson's time. They were talking, and Huther, about having some kind of a skyway going over, a skywalk over Russell Street. Do you remember that? So people could actually cross that busy intersection. So it's interesting, there's always lots of ideas floating around, and the challenge is to grab at them and make something happen, right? So I think that's a great convention center, and I think you do a fabulous job. Thank you. You're a great asset to our city. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. Other questions, comments? If not, I guess I would say we've had some lengthy discussions individually. I've stated that I think there's a place for the convention center that we have now, but ultimately, somehow, some way, I want to see something downtown. That's where people want to be. And I do wonder, I'm just going to ask you, do you think, I may know the answer to this question, do you think that we could continue to have a convention center where we have one and have some sort of a convention center downtown and they could both be successful?
Whoa, the hot question. Well, I was asked that question last night. Mm-hmm. I do. The thing we don't want to do is overbuild. And the thing that we do want to do, if we would do this, would be very, very careful and strategic about if we were to leave the current convention center there, define its purpose, if it were to continue to be a convention center, okay. And if we were to come downtown and build another convention center, I'm guessing they would be on 2 levels of expense of offerings to the potential guests. And we'd have to be very, very careful with that so that we didn't destroy one to get the other one. Many cities around the country have two. We were in Oklahoma City last year bidding a convention, and I was shocked at what they were doing because we were in their convention center, which I was like, wow, look at this big, huge, beautiful convention center. And across the highway, they were building their new one. And I was like, whoa. But they're doing it, and they're using the other one for another, the old one, still as, then anyway, as a convention center. Or do you take the current one and you turn it into some sort of a community, something? Or do you change it into a sports and rec, something? Or, I mean, I'm just talking off my head here with no real thought, but there, I mean, just from visiting with people. I don't know. But if we're going to build for the future, 60,000 square feet is what the task force said we would add, correct? Okay. I so appreciate that. That's wonderful. That will take us up to 120,000 feet. We're still so far behind, it's pathetic. I mean, I appreciate it, but we need 200,000 square feet right now. So I was also asked last night, if I handed you a blank check, what would you do? And I probably better not answer that. But seriously, for the future of Sioux Falls, I'm not going to be here forever, so I guess I can say it. For the future of Sioux Falls, for economic development, I'd take that blank check, I'd build the nicest darn convention center downtown, and I'd 200,000 square feet with a 400-room hotel attached. That's what Sioux Falls needs for the future. And I probably just kissed my job goodbye today. But that is what that's me. That's not the CVB, that's me as an individual. Either that or somebody has got to do something to create the environment that is needed at the current convention center. We've got a great convention center. It's just too small and there's nothing around it. And nobody has jumped on the bandwagon to do anything around it. So let's either get off the dime and do something, or let's decide we're going to be in convention business or not.
Very good. And everybody's allowed to dream, so.
That's my dream.
That's your dream.
My dream, not the CVB's, my dream.
Gotcha. Councilor Sale.
I just have to address that a little bit. That was a very nice political answer to a little bit, but it's almost unfair to ask her if 2 convention centers would be successful. That, in her position, of course she's going to say yes. That's like asking me, do I want pie and cake for dessert? Of course I do. So she is going to answer that both of them are going to be successful because she can make them successful. So I appreciate your answer. I agree that it's time for us to move forward. The debate will be where and how much.
That's right.
And we don't have the blank check.
That's right.
But there is going to be a limit on how much we can spend. So I would hope that in 5 years, we can make your job tremendously easier by adding space. That would be my hope.
Very good. And my other question is, do we have, given that you're kind of a 2-hop to get here for flights generally, and the size of our market, are we big enough yet where we can go after the big national fish, or is it better to stick, I guess, I don't know, I'm not in the business, so I guess for lack of a better term, maybe regional? I mean, is it realistic to be going after the big ones?
National conventions?
Yeah.
We do it every day. But what do you define big as? Pheasant Fest was big, but it wasn't a true convention. It was a convention, but trade show, Lutheran Women that I mentioned a while ago is 3,500 women. 3,500 people, women. That's a good-sized national convention. I don't think that, well, now with the Premier Center, if we really got creative, we could probably go to 5,000. But when you're talking really big national conventions of 10,000 people, we don't have the space. But 5,000 probably with the Premier Center, we could probably do that if the planner was willing to be creative. But in a true convention center with exhibit halls and breakout space such, we don't have the space.
Okay. And by the end, I'm certainly not trying to start any arguments or debates about locations or anything else, but I would also say that, you know, it's not a given that a city necessarily has to build a convention center. It can be done in tandem with a large hotel development, and there's, you know, so it's not just a city enterprise necessarily. Let me ask one other question. So let's say that that money was no object and we built, let's say, a light rail that went from downtown out to the convention center. So it was pretty direct, and it was, you know, going every 10 minutes or so. Everything else was the same convention center. There's what's out there is out there, and you had light rail. And somebody came in and you said, well, we don't have any coffee shops or anything out here, but we do have this light rail. You could stay downtown. And I'm just using light rail as an example. It could be BRT. I'm just talking a very quick. Sure. Would that move the needle for a lot of people, or is it just that they just wanted the surrounding supporting things right there to walk to?
It would move the needle for some, but not a lot. When you go, I assume that, well, I'm this way, I assume other people are. I've heard them say they are. When they go to a convention, they want to be in the headquarter hotel. They want to be attached to the convention center. They don't want to leave that spot unless they want to. They want everything right there. Mm-hmm. They want a Starbucks, and they want, you know, the little shops, and they want, I mean, we all, you know, you want it all right there so you could walk right there and walk right there and walk there. Do I want to jump on a light rail and buzz downtown where I don't know where I'm going, but I've heard it's really cool, and it'll take me a little bit longer. I'd rather just do it right here. Some people will say, yeah, I'll go do it, I've got an hour, but is it, when we're competing against everybody else that already has it all right there? It'll move the needle for some, but I don't think for that many.
Okay. Last thing, and this is purely anecdotal, talking to some people that go to farm shows and certain other shows, some of them say to me, I don't want to go downtown. I like being able to just come right into town and go to the convention and then leave. So doesn't it really, maybe it depends on the target. I mean, some may find the current convention center wonderful and they'll love that location, and some are going to want to be downtown, and it's not necessarily an either or. Is that fair to say?
I think it's pretty accurate. If you get, I'm from Winter. That's my home. I know that people who come over here for events like it out there because they don't want to get down in the city. Mm-hmm. They feel, you know, 41st Street is so much traffic. They feel more comfortable coming in, going to the event, grabbing some gas out on the interstate and going home. So for some, yeah, that's more your state association business, or someone that comes in for a concert or a trade show or something. But you get into your regional, national conventions, probably not.
Very good, thank you. And I promise this was not trying to launch a preemptive debate on the report that we're going to get, but you're so tied into it. You're such a good resource for all of this. So good to have you here. Okay, looks like that's all we have. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. And we'll see you tonight. Yeah. Our next item up is for
Mr. Chair, before you,
yes.
More semantics than anything else, and you addressed it just now, but we didn't approve anything. This was just an informational as part of it, that actually their bid budget and things are part of tonight's first reading and then second reading with the budget. So more just a clarification than anything else. So this isn't the actual approval process like it says on the agenda.
But tonight you approve it, is that correct?
Next week, technically. First reading is tonight.
Is it, or is it a resolution? It might be a
Or is
resolution.
it by resolution that we
I think it's a
adopted?
resolution.
I apologize.
Yes, but
It is tonight.
to your point, it was just informational right now. We're not approving anything at this point. Tonight is the approval.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you. Next, item 4B, City Council Budget Amendments. I'm just going to give a little introduction to this, and then we'll get into it. This item is a unique example of collaboration and cooperation between the City Council and the administration. The administration made it clear they wanted to work cooperatively with city councilors who might have budget amendments. I know a number of councilors, myself included, have worked collaboratively with the administration to determine how and if we might make amendments. And I will say that at least for myself, and I'm suspecting others, the mayor's office, finance, and individual departments have been very helpful in this process. So in the spirit of transparency and cooperation, councilors expressed a desire to introduce possible budget amendments prior to the final adoption of the budget, and this is that opportunity. This will inform the public, the administration, and fellow councilors of amendments that we intend to propose at the final budget hearing. It's important to note that no one is required to disclose their amendments. These are being done voluntarily, and this does not preclude any councilor from modifying, adding, or removing amendments they intend to make at the final budget hearing. This is not intended to be a debate, but although anyone is free to ask questions, of course. It's intended as an opportunity for each councilor to introduce any amendment they wish to disclose. And I believe we have 4 councilors who will introduce 1 or more amendments. So we'll get started, and I believe our first amendment proposal comes from Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. Just a little refresher of what we did last year, and Dave has it up on the screen now, that in the 2019 budget, Councilor Erickson brought it forward, and I signed on as a second to amend and support the NOW program, the New Opportunity Workforce Program, and we funded STI, Southeast Technical Institute, to the amount of $100,000 in the effort of developing our own workforce. This year, that $100,000 amount is in the mayor's 2020 budget, and I'm going to propose that we add an additional $50,000 budget. And I have worked with members of Southeast Technical Institute and gathered some information going back to July of this year. And Mr. Steve Williamson is with us this evening to answer any questions that you may have that I do not wish to elaborate on. But let me give you an idea first of how the $100,000 that we invested last year was utilized by STI, so that you know how it's been used this year, so you have that information in making your decision on whether or not we want to go with an additional $50,000 for 2020. You'd heard about the Vet Tech program, and $60,000 of the $100,000 was invested in the STI Vet Tech program, and they raised and matched the necessary funds to obtain the $500,000 Governor's Economic Development Fund match. And the city of Sioux Falls, our assistance was vital in them obtaining those funds, helped them along the way. And over $1 million has been raised for the new Vet Tech program. And a partnership with McCrossen's Boys Ranch will provide a laboratory for our students to work with the STI students, rather, to work with the large animals. And they expect to be ready to accept students by the fall of 2020. And additionally, they invested $15,000 to classrooms to careers. And this is an area that when I first became a counselor back in 2014, I was proposing programs of this very nature. And the city's commitment perpetuated a relationship with Sanford Health and First Premier Bank to provide needed career counseling and skilled training opportunities for underrepresented student populations in Sioux Falls school systems to help these students explore and consider all options for continuing their education or obtaining direct workforce skills. So $15,000 went to the careers or the classrooms to careers, and I know that Avera has also done something similar on their end. Then there's STI has a telecommunications tower maintenance program. 15,000 of our 100,000 went to that. And you recall just a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, I'd mentioned that we have a couple of radio towers that are in need of improvement that have been down for the good part of a year. And that play a vital role in our metro communications network. Well, this is the type of a program that would assist in that type of maintenance, because the Southeast Tech program does just that, provides that type of unique skill set for that. So 15,000 went into that program. And then another program, Enhanced ESL, ESL is English Second Language Services, $10,000 was invested there. 32 to 34% of high school grads do not go on to higher education. 32 to 34%. So just over a third of our high school population does not go beyond that point. And so STI believes, as I do, that providing and enhancing the ESL assistance is important to workforce development in Sioux Falls. I've always stated that. I think it's, you know, we have tapped into it a little bit, but not nearly to the degree that we can. And I think the ESL services program can help us do a better job in directing these individuals to careers that will be beneficial to themselves and beneficial to us as a community. So they'll use funds for the startup of the expenses for the development of an ESL assistance office at Southeast Tech, staffing, supplies, and other resources for their degree seeking students. So, and these funds will be used also to leverage to gain more funding through private and public sources too. So it's not going to be just the city of Sioux Falls funding this, but it'll be hopefully a community effort. And Steve had also mentioned in the information he had sent me that this initiative aligns with their Aspire to Tech program, which helps lower level ESL students achieve early success toward their career aspirations. And once a student completes the Aspire to Tech program, this new initiative will help these individuals to further their workforce skills into a Southeast Tech program. And so I'm hopeful that the $50,000, while I'm not going to tell and direct STI how to use the additional $50,000 if indeed we are successful and if you are supportive of this program, but I would like to see additional dollars in support to the Classrooms to Careers program. Currently it's at $15,000, and currently out of that $100,000 from the city pot of money that we dedicated last year, $10,000 goes to the Enhanced ESL services. I would like to see additional assistance there as well too. So that's the rationale behind the $50,000 additional funding. If you have any questions, and Steve Williamson is here, and if I may, Steve, if you have anything that you would like to add, may I invite him to the podium at this point?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome, Steve.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I want to thank you for your support last year. On a personal note, I just wanted to let you know that I've been away from Sioux Falls for the last 4 years, living in Chicago, and I just took my daughter to college. And when my wife and I were thinking about where we would go, because we weren't going to stay in Chicago. I mean, we loved it, but it's too expensive. I have to admit, I kept track of what the city council was doing and what the Sioux Falls and what this mayor is doing. And it was watching what you all are doing and what you're investing in. was a big part of us moving back to Sioux Falls. I love all the initiatives. I love the quality conversation that you're having. And so I want to tell you that you made a difference in us moving back to Sioux Falls and coming back to South Dakota. You know, as Councilman Kiley said, about 30 to 35% of our students graduate from high school are not going on for any sort of education. The other 70%, give or take, are going on for a 4-year education, a 2-year education, a technical degree, the armed forces or something like that. But then there's also the story that of those students that do go on for a 4-year degree, only about half to 60% will actually graduate from college. And you might be aware, and this is why this is important, this investment, this type of thinking is important. Right now, South Dakota, a lot of sources say that we have the worst student debt problem in the country. Not bad, the worst. 75% of our students are graduating with some kind of student debt, and the average amount of student debt is $35,000. So this type of investment provides to students who do not have access to capital the opportunity to go on for higher education. And it might be a certificate program like a certified nursing associates, which there's many jobs available in this town. It might be getting a job as an electrician, which we had standing room only. We had a waiting list for this year. So I want to talk real quick about last year. So for example, like the vet tech, how do we do things? So to start up a vet tech program is actually about a $6 million venture. It's actually closer to $6 million because you have to have a farm and you have to have cattle and you have to have horses and things of that sort. And this is why I think President Griggs has done such an exceptional job. Not only did we get an investment from public sources and private sources, but we figured out, and he figured out, and this leadership figured out, how do you go and solve a $5 million gap? And that's with using McCross and Boys Ranch. So we can go ahead and provide services to them, and then at the same time, go ahead and provide a laboratory for our students to go and have the necessary experience so they can be quality. There is not a vet tech program right now in South Dakota. That's pretty important to our agricultural committee. So moving forward, there's 2 areas that we're really looking at what we feel like we need to do to get a hold of that 30% a little more. And I think that's a great opportunity to grow our workforce development. And one of them is in our Classrooms to Career program. We think we can scale that a lot more. This is an opportunity for students to target students who, for various reasons, are not looking at going on for higher education. For whatever sources, lack of access to capital, first generation not getting the proper mentorship, things of that sort. And it gets them dual credit starting primarily their senior year, where they're getting dual credit while also getting their high school degree. So when they come out of high school, they already have college credit and they have a high school degree. And if they're on their way to either being a CNA, a certified nursing assistant, and they can get a job at $14 to $16 an hour with a certified nursing assistant's certificate, or they can work their way to an LPN or an RN or med tech or phlebotomy or whatever it might be. But we see that this is an opportunity. Right now, between Classrooms to Career and Avera Academy, we probably have about 40 students in those programs. We could do a lot more. And it's a great opportunity for these students that don't have the access to higher education to have access to higher education, engage themselves in the workforce. And I love this program. I applaud the city. I applaud First Premier, and I applaud Sanford Health. So in the first semester, they would take an English course, and they take a student success course. And then second semester, they focus on an area that is of most interest to them, and most of these folks are looking into some kind of healthcare. So that is an area that we believe that we can, with more funding, can go ahead and affect a lot more students, bring a lot more into the program, and affect the lives, the trajectory of students. Second thing is we need to enhance our ESL services. We need to go and provide to more people English as a second language. We need to meet students where they're at. Some students have very little English, some have more than others. We need to meet them where they're at and help them matriculate through the system, retain them, and graduate. And English as a second language can be very helpful. Now, Councilman Kiley brought up the Aspire to Tech. It's a wonderful program. What it does is it takes students who have significant English as a second language. They're not very far along in the process. It teaches them the English language while learning a trade, mostly in healthcare right now. So when they get done with this program, they are a CNA. They are a certified nursing assistant. And so we literally move a person from having not great opportunities to all of a sudden having a job, serving in our two largest industries right now. And honestly, eventually, if they want to, they can move on to an LPN, an RN, they can move on to med tech, they can move on to phlebotomy, they can move on to maybe a bachelor's degree. But it's a wonderful program, and I think all of this is worth your consideration. I know you have a lot of other things that you have on your plate too, but I think we are getting great results at Southeast. 74% retention rate, and we are up this year. Questions?
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very
Councilor
much,
Kiley.
Steve. And I would just say that at this point, we are open to, I and Steve are open to any questions that you may have about this proposal.
Questions for Councilor Kiley or Mr. Williamson?
I just have a comment.
Sure.
I'm so grateful that you're listening to the conversation, and I've never heard it called quality conversation before. But we certainly do have our spirited debates.
If you saw what I saw in Chicago, you would say quality conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Steve, for taking time out of your day on relatively short notice as well.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilor Kiley. So, the next item that we have, I believe, find my notes here. Here we go. It looks like we have Councilor Sale up next. You have any sort of presentation for us, or?
I do not have a
discussion?
presentation. I just believe that this is an unnecessary position, and I just would like to cut it from the budget.
Short and sweet, very good. Any questions?
I have a question. Why do
Councilor
you think
Brecky.
it's unnecessary?
Janet, as you and I have been served in the city for many years, the culture starts with the mayor. And in lack of the mayor starting the culture, it defaults to the department heads. And in this case, I believe it still should sit with the mayor, and that's why I don't think we need the position.
Councilor Kiley.
Thank you. I know that we'll be debating this issue at a different time, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. But I do, in a conversation I had with Councilor Staley earlier today, I do and value what our employees bring to the city, and I value their opportunities and the opportunities that they have to grow and to mature on the job. And I do think there's great value in a position of this nature in helping us to retain good employees, because every time we lose an employee, a vast amount of history goes out the door along with them. And then a vast amount of energy has to go back into training new individuals to fill that same position. So those are just some of the reasons. I mean, I can talk about this in greater detail later on, but you know, I do see benefit in this, but I also see value in you bringing forth what you feel is necessary too, Counselor. I'll cut down on the quantity part and leave it at that.
Very good. Other comments?
Well, just comments, just, you know, from a clarification standpoint, I think for me, really one of my concerns and my only concern about this position is the title. And I would, you know, I would prefer a different title. I know that this is a kind of a title that's used in business, you know, to describe this position. But for me, you know, career path, you know, implementation person or something. There's a dozen other names that I would come up to call this. And I think it's important for the public to understand, and we will be debating this, you know, but I do think it's important for the public to understand that this isn't a position about diversity, because that's what I first thought. I thought maybe it was a diversity position that was going to, you know, encourage diversity amongst the city employee group, and I was excited about that. But I got a, you know, a very good, and we all did, a good detailed explanation from the mayor's office, and I'm assuming, you know, that will be done publicly at some point. But this position is designed to help the city, you know, advance the interests of existing employees in having a career and making a career commitment to the city of Sioux Falls. And in an environment where there's, you know, lots of competition in the workforce, the city, you know, in the HR department, you know, has said that they have, you know, we're going to have to be competitive, because it's going to be hard to keep and retain employees, and we're not going to have the luxury that we had in the past of just easily, you know, keeping and retaining employees. So I realize I'm not trying to debate it now. I realize that's for the future, but I do think it's important that people understand, number one, nothing like this has ever existed, which is created in the city. And again, you and I know this because we worked in the city. A lack of opportunity to have a specific career path that you want to try to follow. And it's been more hit and miss and luck and whoever that you happen to maybe be able to acquire as a mentor and that would help you move forward and advance forward. And so I do think this is one of those kind of business-like philosophies that you know, might be very useful for the city. But I just think it's important that we understand that's what the position is about, because I think there's been some confusion about that.
Other comments? Good dialogue. Okay. Next up, we have Councilor Staley, who has 2 amendments, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to say that in talking about this budget activity, that I want the citizens to understand that this is the appropriate time for us to bring amendments. This is how it works. And we did do a budget working session, I believe it was back in March. And I'm so grateful that we did this. It's the first time I've ever known that it's happened, where we came together as council members and throughout brainstormed these ideas that we'd like to see within the budget. And we tried to get ahead of the mayor and his department heads formalizing this budget that has been brought to us, so that our ideas would be brought into that. And Sean Pritchett sitting over there, and I appreciate that he was listening, and he actually did implement some of our ideas into the budget that and the activity that we've been voting on. So just so people understand how that works. So this particular item was brought to my attention in July by a citizen who tagged me on a Facebook post, and I would encourage people to go to my Facebook page and you can actually see a video of this being used. I had wanted to put the video up today, but we can't do that because it was actually a commercial type video, which we're prohibited from putting up. But it was a neat thing. Guy from Strong Towns tagged me in it, and I put it on Facebook, and it received very strong support from people looking at this video. So I thought, well, that's kind of neat. So I brought it to some of my colleagues and threw it out there, and they thought it sounded neat. And I sat down with my budget analyst, Dave Bixler, and our legislative expert, Jim David, and I said, hey, let's do a little research on this, find out how much they cost, what the logistics are as far as moving them. And so we gathered some information about that. And then we took that information and we met with the park director, Don Kearney, and his staff member, and talked about it, and they were excited about it. And so that's how things start within city government, just so people understand that it's not just to snap your fingers and make something happen. There is a series of meetings you have to go through, vetting processes, and then meeting with the counselors, which I did do after I met with the park director. And I met with all the counselors or had a conversation with them, and I got input from them to say, what do you think about this? The cost is going to be around $5,000-ish. Postage and shipping was like $300 to $500. So when we met with the park director, we said, well, how about trying 3 of them? And would it damage your budget, to have to pay $20,000 out of a $20 million budget plus $20 million plus budget. And Don Kearney, our park director, didn't think that would be a problem at all. He did, however, want us to bring this want me to bring it as an amendment. We also discussed that when it comes time to what company it would be, that's going to be left to the discretion of the park department. And I know I posted this video on Facebook again today, and some people commented, oh, let's do this locally. And I know Councilor Erickson had mentioned using Gage Brothers, and we vetted that out, and that is not going to work, right, Dave Bixler? Yeah, we got verification that Gage Brothers can't afford to, or they can't handle, not handle, but that this isn't in their processes. So we'll let the park department decide, vet out lowest bid, whatever, how they're going to do it. And then also we were talking about location. And we kind of had that discussion that let the park department decide what would be appropriate. My own thought was have it maybe at one of them by a bike trail where people would get off. And there was talk about having something downtown. Again, today I'm hearing people talk about getting input from the community, and I think that would be, once this is passed and put into the budget, I think that would be appropriate. So I will tell Director Kearney next week that would be, we'd like them to be listening to people. It'd be nice to have them placed across our, different parts of our city. And the people I met with on the council seemed to think 3 of them as kind of a pilot project would be appropriate. Think of these as like an adult playground equipment thing. And they also have, you can play checkers on some of the things you can buy. There's all sorts of different options, but I guess I was inclined to start with this. Another thing that was brought up is, what about a vandalism issue? Could these things be, hurt? And so what I responded on Facebook today is I said, these are in the same category as our playground equipment, which, by the way, in the past we've seen up, $300,000 that has been allocated for playground equipment. I don't think people are aware of the large amount of money we use. This is a $20,000 request. So we got playground equipment, we've got picnic shelters, we got bathrooms. McKinnon used to have horseshoe throwing. I don't know if they still do that. We got that skateboard park over at Drake Springs. We got park benches. We got all sorts of hardscape things in our parks already. We're also doing pickleball down at Riverdale Park, and again, that skateboard park at Drake Springs. Ice skating. So, and as far as physical things, in an area, we just passed an ordinance to allow fire pits to be put downtown. That's, I believe, on sidewalks. So we're doing physical things all the time creatively, and it doesn't necessarily go through a long process of evaluation or studies. So again, I would say to people, visit my Facebook page if you want to just click on and watch these things being used. I think it's a neat thing. We want to encourage adults to get out and get exercise. And again, I tried to get input from people. 3 seemed to be the number that people thought they could live with. If someone said, hey, Teresa, my colleague said, let's just get 1. I would have said, okay, I'm willing to collaborate and compromise. I just think it's good to get this into our city's park system and let people try it. And then, see what happens from there. So that's my first thing.
Very good. And I think it would make sense to open it up to questions on this one, and then we will go to the next one. Any questions regarding the First Amendment? Doesn't look like it.
In the First Amendment, thank you.
All right, very good.
My First Amendment. Okay, so the second thing has to do with Project Trim. And let me find where I wrote this down. As some of you may know, Project Trim has been something I've wanted to work on for many years. It's been a concern of mine for many years. So first of all, I'm just going to talk about a side note that has nothing to do with this. This is a done deal, and thanks be to Dave Bixler, our budget analyst, because he went at my request and he talked to our park director and asked if he would consider doing a pilot project of Project Trim that would be the city would do it themselves and wouldn't charge these people. So they're going to be starting, and I'm asking for the details of when, where, and who. But they're going to be doing a 4-block area in the Hilltop neighborhood to see how much energy this takes, how much, time and money it would cost to, if we were to at someday take this on as a city, as a service for our people. So that was really, I'm so grateful, very good. But the other thing that I'm proposing is that we create a fund that would help people in need that couldn't pay their Project Trim bill. And I initially was proposing $100,000 for this. And as you just heard, we're giving $150,000 to Southeast Votech. So, it's not like we do give money to help other things besides the streets in our community and the police. After visiting with my colleagues, we came to the consensus that instead of $100,000 in this fund, we would start with $50,000. And again, I met with the park department and we talked about this, and we talked about having a little paragraph at the bottom of the citations, so to speak. I don't think they're not necessarily citations, but when you get that notification, you've got a tree that needs to be trimmed. It would say at the bottom, if you have certain financial concerns, you can qualify for this, call this number. And the thought is it would be fashioned somewhat after the pool pass discounts that we have for people. I'm going to let the park department, if this passes, they can come up with the parameters of how you would verify people's eligibility. One of my colleagues, Councilor Neitzer, was pretty strong about saying this should be income-based when we do that. So somehow they'd have to come up with a way of defining that. And I'm just so happy that we could try this, because we may find that nobody's interested, and maybe my concerns about people's ability to pay have been unfounded all these years. But this would be a really wonderful gesture for our community. So that's the second one, the Second Amendment.
Okay. Questions, comments? Councilor Erickson.
I just want to say I appreciate your thought going into this. knowing that it's for qualified residents and having that guideline there, I think is key. It's important. It already exists, like you had, when we sat down and talked about it, you had said, hey, it already exists. We do it for the pool passes. And so that seems to make sense to have the standard the same for it. And so I just appreciate your putting the time in to think outside the box to do something a little bit different than just say, hey, we're just going to do it for the whole city. And so I just want to just mention that.
Thank you.
And if I may, it might also be worthwhile to clarify that this is a maximum of 50,000. It could be anywhere in there, and it would depend on how many applicants there would be. So it could go up to 50,000. But it'll be a very interesting project, I think. So very good. Any other questions, comments? Okay, looks like you get off pretty easy. So the final amendment is mine. I have one amendment. It's a large one by dollar amount, and I have a first reading tonight for a supplemental appropriation, and of course we have second reading, so I'm going to try to keep this somewhat brief because I don't want to make you sit through a lengthy presentation 3 times in a row. So with that, this is a Cherry Creek Trail corridor. This is essentially what would be the west side bike trail, and Dave is going to help me here with lines here. Right now, the main bike trail has a west side spur that goes all the way to Legacy Park, which is over on the left. That is 12th and Sertoma Avenue is where it terminates. For many years, in fact, since 2007, from Dunham Park, which is over on Marion Road, connected over to Legacy Park. And then starting in the early 2010s, there has been something in the plan with the Cherry Creek Trail corridor. It has continually been pushed back and pushed back and pushed back for a multitude of reasons, and it was deleted entirely in this last proposed budget. Even before I ran, there was a lot of people on the northwest side that said, when are we going to get this bike trail? I've been hearing about it for years and years and years. And this would do it. This is called the Cherry Creek Corridor. It would extend up to Family Park. It would make a connection over in this neighborhood where you have a lot of residential, including a very large amount of manufactured housing and people that could connect directly onto the bike trail from there. It would eventually go up, connect to George McGovern Middle School and a future park, very close, go to CTE Academy, the new high school, go up to University Center, stop at the southeast on the way through, and ultimately it would also go over the existing, there's an overpass that's up there by southeast that would connect it back to the main bike trail, I believe. Now, this entire project would take multiple years and a great deal of funding. So what the Parks Department has done is they have essentially a master plan where they have split it into phases. And this right here would be the first 2 phases. The first phase would go from Legacy Park underneath 12th Street at the bridge, and it would go up to Songbird Street. That's the next phase. There's one little piece of right-of-way they have to get to have all of the right-of-way they need to do this. They're working with the property owner, and it's looking good. This one is a high priority because it would get you to Songbird Street, which then would connect all of that on the north side. Then the next piece would be to make a connection over to Family Park. The first part from Legacy Park up to Songbird Street is about $686,000, if memory serves. It's $636,000. Yeah, $636,000 for the construction. It's $384,000, I want to say, to go from Songbird Street over to Family Park. The highest priority, of course, is to do that first phase. So, taking a look at the budget, that's a pretty heavy lift. Something had to give with all of the work that was proposed. So I did take a look and see, could we get it done in 20? Could we get it done in potentially 21? And through an iterative process working with Parks and with Finance, I think I've come up with a plan that's very reasonable, it's incremental, responsible, and it would work. And that would include The first part would be a $200,000 supplemental appropriation that would pay for the engineering and the design for both of those two phases that you see. That would be funded by the capital surplus that we have now. There's about 450 left in the capital surplus this year, which is why I'd be asking for the supplemental to start funding that. They could start that later this year, and it could run into next year, and they could work on the engineering. So the first piece is $200,000 of supplemental appropriation. This has a benefit of we don't have to cut anything in 20 to do this particular piece. We can start engineering now. The Parks Department likes to engineer in year one and then construct the next year, because by the time you're done with engineering, then it's getting late in the year, and then the bids aren't as good. It's better to bid at the beginning of a year. So they, theoretically, you would want to do something like engineer 20 and then bid and build in 21. So that's the first part, would be asking for that supplemental. Now, that's not part of the actual budget. It's a separate ordinance, but they obviously go hand in hand because it's the design. The other thing I did want to mention before I continue is that it has been identified multiple times in surveys, including this newest master plan. At the very top of the list is people want more bike trails. They want more connectivity. They want it to be closer to where they live. We have a magnificent bike trail that goes around the city, essentially around the core in a circle. It's that connectivity going west and east that people are looking for. And this starts to work on that. And it's been in the works for many, many years. So the first part is that $200,000 supplemental, which I'll be talking about for the first reading. The second component is the construction piece. Now, I did take a look and see, could that be funded entirely, in 20, and there's just, it's tight. So what we've come up with is starting construction in 21, which actually makes more sense considering the phasing that you need to do, since you don't want to do it in 1 year. And we would put in a placeholder of $100,000 for 21 that would start to fund the construction. Now, we don't put in the entire amount because we just need to put in an amount that essentially would make the statement, if the council would so agree that it's a priority, that we want to start moving this along. And then next year, as we start the budget cycle, there's going to be a lot of things. We'll see how sales tax goes. We'll see what kind of budget surplus there is, capital surplus. And then there's going to be probably quite a bit of FEMA dollars that are going to come in. We don't know exactly how much from the flooding. So there's a lot of moving targets. So at this point, and we're not appropriating for 21, it's just a plan. So going in and cutting things for 21 to try to fund it really there's really no point because it's way too early. We don't know how things are going to shake out, and we don't know what the financial picture is going to look like. So it's just $100,000 that we can fit into the budget that would essentially put a placeholder in to say we'd like to start to construct in 21. When we get into 2020, whoever's on the council and the administration will look at the plan, and they'll see if they can make it work out. Maybe it's something that you do in 2 phases. You do the red piece and then the yellow piece over 2 years. Maybe you do the red piece and then you got to wait a few years to do the yellow piece. It just depends. So, and I should mention, the Parks Department likes to continue and stop at a logical stopping point, and these are 2 logical points to stop. The one is at Songbird Street, the one is at Family Park. You don't like to go halfway up to essentially no real landmark and just stop, obviously. So they have phased it out entirely. Just seeing if I have anything else I wanted to talk about yet. So I guess in closing, I would just say that this would just start to create the momentum and start the project moving. It's been identified as a very high priority. Hayward Elementary is just over to the east there. You've got a large population that would love to be able to start to connect onto the bike trail and not have to cross busy streets to get there. Family Park is identified as something that would be great to get connected to eventually, because you have different leisure activities and fishing and boating and things that would be something the Parks Department would like to have direct access to. And again, it's been a very collaborative effort. I think it's something that could be done without a whole lot of disruption, and it's a good, responsible way to get there without having to make huge cuts to important projects that are already funded. So with that, I'll take any questions. Councilor Staley.
When it gets up to the family park, then what was the long-term plan then for the bike trail? Is that where it was going to stop, or was it ever going to go past that?
Yeah, so essentially that's, I would call it sort of a spur. I mean, Dave, could you go back to the first one? So it's kind of it just goes over to Family Park, and maybe Dave can show, it's a little red piece. Show where it goes from the main part to, go up a little higher. Go from Family Park down to what would be like the main. Yeah, so that's what that is there, that little piece right there. So ultimately, it would continue going to your right on your screen, which is going northbound and going up and following Skunk Creek and going all the way up. So that other piece to Family Park is really what you would call a spur, where they have those that come off of the bike trail and head over to certain parks. That's not the main leg of the bike trail. The main leg goes northbound there. It's that piece you see in red.
But is there ever a plan to take that and loop that around to the north of the city to connect?
So I think ultimately, possibly, now that being said, there's a lot of floodway and undevelopable land up there, so it's not really, I don't think that area is really targeted for annexation anytime soon. So I think it's something that may happen someday, but I don't think it's realistically going to be anytime soon. There's a lot of residential that's to the south there that's building up. In fact, we just annexed an area right up there at Ellis Road and 12th Street. A lot of residential, but going north, there's so much floodplain that it's really not real optimal land. And of course, until we annex, we wouldn't be building on it. So maybe someday, but their main goal is to get up by the high school and get up to University Center.
And then, so the 200,000 for the design, that would be spent this next year in 2019?
Yes, so it would be, if it was approved, they could start spending it this year, but capital dollars do carry over. So realistically, what they said was they might get through surveys this year, but most of the money would be spent in 2020. But capital dollars carry over. You don't have to spend them by the end of the year for them to be able to use them.
And what would be the total cost of the project?
Total cost?
That the 200,000 was designing?
Yep, okay.
Is 100,000, that's not the whole, to implement it?
Nope. Okay, so 200,000 does the design, and then the estimated cost, all in for construction, assuming that you were going to go all the way from Legacy Park to Family Park, is about $1,273,000. That is $636,000 for construction from Legacy Park up to Songbird Street, which Dave, maybe you can, essentially it's from Legacy there going all the way up to where it starts right there, stop right there. That's that. The next piece is $384,000 that goes up to Family Park. That's a more expensive connection because there's one or two bridges that would have to get constructed. So that's why that one is maybe a little lower on the priority list. It's something where you may even choose to go north instead of going over. It's an important thing to do, but you got the Skunk Creek in the way there. So that's what adds on to the cost per foot. It's the bridges.
So so I'm just looking at the design part. If we start, let's say we get this design part done, and then we get real short on money. So I just wouldn't want the design to be done and then we don't have anything to do with, we can't do anything with the design. I mean, because once we've spent the 200,000, so, and I don't know how that usually works within city budgets. I mean, projects, do we usually have it ready to go right on top of the design versus pushing it off
Somebody else could answer, but talking, sometimes it is, and sometimes you do a design and it might sit and it might wait a handful of years. It's not completely atypical. I mean, most of the design is going to be the big piece you would like to do from Legacy up to Songbird Street, but.
And so the 100,000 is for down below, that's going to be for what?
So essentially, you have to put something in to put it into the plan. So it's just putting some amount of money in so that you're basically making the statement, we would like to do construction starting in 21. And when we get there, we'll work on trying to figure out whether we could plug in 636 or $1 million or whatever amount that we could possibly afford. So it's just, you just had to pick a number. Because it's just, again, it's 21, so we're not appropriating anything next week if it's approved. All it is just a plan saying that we would like to try to construct it in 2021. So
You mean you would like to have the $1 million in it? If we're going to construct it, we're going to spend or 600,000 or whatever, right? It's
yeah, I mean, so like depending on who's around in the next, in the next year or whatever, I mean, my preference would be to see ultimately the 2021, that 100,000 would change to 636,000. And you'd have to find that money. Again, you could go into the 21 plan right now and you could start cutting projects to make it fit. But again, we're not appropriating, it's just a plan. So we're not making any final decisions anyway. So it's all kind of, theoretical anyway. So there's really no benefit to putting in the full amount and starting to cut all kinds of different projects, because sales tax may come in higher and maybe nothing has to be cut. Or maybe the economy turns and we can't build any of it in 21 and it's going to have to wait until 22. So it's just trying to make the statement that we would like to see it incrementally starting to progress. So, Councilor Brecky.
Just a question. In your discussions, you said it kept getting pushed back. Did you get a feel for, why why it wasn't rising to a place of priority?
Yeah, and there's multiple reasons, and all of them are very valid. One of the biggest was right-of-way acquisition. They're down to one piece that they have left to do that entire segment. And of course, you got to get all the right-of-ways. You don't get easements or buy the property. There's one piece left. They're in active negotiations right now. They're feeling very confident about it. I actually know the landowner that owns that property. That was part of it. And then, of course, funding. There's always priorities that things slip. So I think it's probably the combination of the right-of-way is a big one, and we're finally to where they almost have that right-of-way acquired. I mean, they're within shooting distance. But of course, funding it also dropped out because something had to give in this budget to do the 83% roads. I mean, that's just the way it was. So,
okay. Thanks.
Others? Okay. Looks like that's it for our budget amendments. I believe that's going to take us to public comment. If there's anybody who has any public comment, you have up to 5 minutes to talk about anything that was on the agenda today. Anybody that wants to speak? Welcome.
Hello, Jordan Devenbaugh. First off, I just wanted to speak on the table tennis amendment. First of all, that's awesome. I want to state, we need more stuff like that. Placemaking things are great. The one thing I want to suggest, though, in terms of placement and use, I think one of the best things that could be done with something like that is taking a tactical urbanist approach. Say with the Parks Department, you can find used table tennis tables from any church that has a back room or whatever, and do special events or try them in neighborhoods and see if people actually show up. Actually see if there's engagement. Another thing too, I saw that it was three of them in 3 different parks. There is something to say about density and intensity. If you were to take the 3 of them and put them in the same place, then you have the potential of having multiple games going on. Then you have the potential to do tournaments and things like that. So sort of to make sure that they have the full effectiveness of it, just to make sure that the strategy is strong and that the money is being used effectively and it can be done, the more action can be created. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, with the stadium, the event center area, I think one thing to be thinking about is how does the ecosystem work there? Can there be some new urbanist approaches to making that basically its own village? How do you make that a place that is dynamic and interesting? And I would say shoot for the moon, make it architect-led, dynamic, interesting design, and make it something people want to go to and engage with. We have a Arc of Dreams that just was put up, and there are people coming from all over the state, all over the region to see it. So what's something that could be done that is interesting and dynamic, and there could be different ways you could collide with industry to do that. I like to point out, if any of you are familiar with Meow Wolf in Santa Fe, which just expanded out into Las Vegas and Denver. The last valuation I saw was something like 50 million, but that was a couple of years ago. I looked it up just before this. They just did a venture capital funding of 150 million for that. And it's just this weird it's a bowling alley that has this Victorian house, and you open up a fridge and you transfer into another dimension. It's immersive art. It's really dynamic, really interesting, and people are eating it up. Now, is it the right thing for Sioux Falls? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. But there's other examples. You can look at St. Louis. They have the City Museum. It was built in the 1970s. It is a 4-story immersive art playground. Kids and adults engage in it. Now, I'm just saying these things because it's like, if you want to make people want to come to it, and I'm one of those elusive millennials that people talk about, like how do you get their attention? Well, you do it by having something interesting. So I figured I'd just throw that out there. So, all right, thank you. I gotta go.
Thank you. Others for public input? Welcome.
Greetings, Brian Burge. Recently moved to the area, mechanical engineer by nature, and have some experience in the garage industry, and one part I've noticed has been just one of the standards that seems to be missed that's applied by the rest of the country. And I wanted to see how do we structure a conversation and what time and what venue to evaluate, are we truly inspecting to the building codes that are set in place through federal mandates and federal UL standards. So didn't know how we had that conversation. So this may not be the right forum for it, but just wanted to ask, where do I go to have a conversation of what should we be inspecting, under whose jurisdiction does it fall, and how do we drive the conversation of is it the right scope for it to fall under Sioux Falls building code?
Okay, we'll get you connected to the right person right after we're done. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Any other input? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.